I'm in the middle of merging my two businesses, Hilary Clark Studios, where I create feelings out of fiber and offer my textured fiber paintings for sale, and Harmony Coaching, my coaching business, where I work with people who want to drop the perfectionism and develop a regular creative practice so they can reconnect to the imaginative, intuitive, playful part of themselves. And this merging process feels a little overwhelming. I was actually a little nauseous today as I thought about all the work I needed to do. But here's what I decided. I'm going to start where I am. And I've done that before, and I know you can do that too. So this is a story about a time I started where I was, even though I wasn't ready. It was 1998, and my first father-in-law had been diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. He was given 30 days to live, and this was just devastating. But after getting over the shock, my very next reaction was to create, which was surprising to me at the time. I remember wondering where that came from. But he felt really constant chills from the cancer, so I decided I was going to make him a quilt to keep him warm, and just something with simple piecing and minimal stitching. I knew how to sew, but I did not know how to quilt. My mother had done lots of quilting, but I had never bothered, and in fact, I was rather resistant to sewing completely, just overall, because I'm short, and I was. My mother told me when I was a kid I needed to learn how to sew because I was going to always be short, so I would need to know how to hem things and make my clothes. Which, if you know me at all, know that was just a sign for me to rebel. So while I had a sewing machine, I wasn't really fond of sewing, and so this urge to make this lat quilt really did surprise me. But again, the feelings I felt for him, for my first father-in-law, and this devastating news that he had received, that his life was going to be ending shortly, just prompted me to do something that was really a little out of character for me at the time. So, like I said, I was surprised by it, but I did it anyway, and I am still grateful. He was able to stay warm in his final days by sitting under that quilt. And making that first simple quilt really opened something up inside of me. Over the next decade, I made a whole bunch of lat quilts. I gave all of them away. And there were periods of constant making interspersed with these really long dry spells. And in the last few years of that decade of making those lat quilts, I shifted from making lat quilts to experimenting with making art quilts because I didn't want to make traditional things. But then I got divorced for the second time because during that decade I was married once and divorced and got married a second time. So then I got divorced a second time and I stopped creating. And so from 2008 to 2014, I did very little creatively. Again, start where you are. It doesn't have to be perfect. Anyway, I did very little creatively. And although my work in aviation construction management actually offered opportunities that I didn't recognize as creative at the time. But in 2014, I decided it was time for a career change. I was burnt out on what I was doing professionally, and I really wanted to do something different. So I wanted out of aviation construction management, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I enrolled in this online self-directed career coaching program. Again, I wasn't really ready, but I started anyway. And what I learned surprised me. I went into that program hoping to find a new and interesting job path, and instead what I found was a really soul-deep need to create. And for me, this meant making art, and to quote Neil Gaiman, to make good art. That's what I wanted to do. So I started where I was I got my sewing machine out, I pulled out some fabric and thread, and I had a little idea in my head of what I wanted to do, and I just began. And 6 years later, I'm still making art because I turned that art making into a regular creative practice, which is really, I think, what kept me going. And that opened up a variety of doors in so many other ways. It opened up my eyes to the creativity I was able to apply in my corporate job in aviation construction management. It opened up my eyes for an eventual career shift out of that industry and into the art making and into coaching. That regular creative practice I truly credit with every major change I've made in the last 6 years. But again, I started where I was. I wasn't ready. I didn't really know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't even know what I was going to create. But I started where I was. So if you feel called to create things, whether it's artsy stuff or projects at work or whatever it may be, but you're not doing it, we should talk. Because it's not about being ready, it's about starting where you are. So I'd like to know what you're not doing because you think you need to be ready. So, tell me in the comments or message me and we'll set up time to talk, okay? For now, that's all I've got today. If this resonated with you, again, drop me a comment, hit the like button, send me a message. Or, if you think it's going to resonate, if you feel called, share it with others too, because it may be something that they need to hear today as well. So like I said, drop me a comment, send me a message, let's get in touch. Let's talk about what it is that you're not doing because you think you need to be ready. Because you don't have to be ready. You just need to start where you are. All right. So that's all I've got for today. Take care. Have a fabulous week. And I hope we'll talk soon. And otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.